Okay, everybody, it's about 5 after the hour with our friends from the East Coast getting ready for nap time. I'd say we should get our event underway. I would like to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us. It is officially the end of Women's History Month 2022. Hopefully everyone had a chance to celebrate and reflect on some of the major accomplishments of the great women in our community in general and also in our sports community. And with that, we'd like to start our event. I think if we can move, we're going to welcome two founders in a minute, but we're going to have a special offer tonight for those founders who've joined us. If there are female founders or female identifying founders in our audience tonight, we're offering, who are in the US working on a sports or sports related company, we're going to kind of volunteer to spend an hour with you to work on your plan, give you some guidance, generally be a mentor or coach for you sometime in the month of April. So if you are qualified for that, please, during the course of the session, drop your name and a little info, a one-liner or a link to your company into the chat during the session. And if our system works as planned, we'll draw a random drawing and announce our winner before we conclude our program tonight. So a little bit of goodwill and hopefully a chance for us to meet some new great female founder in our community. So with that, I would like to again welcome the audience and especially welcome our two amazing founders tonight. Have had the privilege and pleasure to know Mina Yoo, who is the founder of Heroclip since I believe late 2017. We actually met Mina right around the time we started Oregon Sports Angels. And she has a very interesting and successful story of the company. So we're going to welcome Mina. And also, in a very fun and interesting pandemic turn of events, we met Meridith Cass, who is the CEO of Nix Biosensors. She's in the Boston area, and we literally have become friends over Zoom. We haven't yet met in person, although I absolutely look forward to that soon. So for anyone out there wondering, do deals get done and do investments get made when you actually literally haven't met the person? I'd say the answer is yes. So it is my pleasure and our privilege to welcome Mina and Meridith with us this evening. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. So why don't we start with you guys? Let's hear a little about your stories and just go from there. And again, interactive for folks on the line. Please drop questions into the Q&A or into the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them towards the end of the session. So maybe I'll start with you, Mina. Why don't you lead us off?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks so much for having us here. This is wonderful. And I'll just start with how I started my company, Heroclip. Would that be good? Okay, cool. So my company is Heroclip, and it is a physical product company. This is the product right here. It is a very simple product, a carabiner that opens to a rotating hook. And I came up with the idea for this product many years ago when I had my first baby. And then I decided to train to summit Mount Rainier here in Washington to get back into shape. And for both going out with my baby and for climbing mountains, I realized that I was lugging a lot of things all the time. And I realized that for both of these things, oftentimes I just didn't have a good place to store my stuff when I wanted to take a load off. And I realized, I would love to have some device where I could just hang my stuff no matter what I was doing. And I couldn't find anything, so I invented it and started out with Kickstarter, and it ended up doing really well. I ended up getting the product into places like REI, and it was versatile enough to get into like the Container Store, Lowe's, and a lot of other stores. And as Kate might have mentioned, I ended up selling it just a couple months ago. And so it's been an amazing, fun journey. And I'm just really grateful to this organization, OSA, and the amazing investors I met. And here I am. Thank you for having me. Meredith?
That's amazing for founders like me who are probably still a few years behind founders like you to hear that story. Meridith Cass, founder and CEO of Nix Biosensors. We have a biosensor that's worn on the body that quantifies fluid losses and electrolyte losses, initially for endurance athletes, but expanding to team sports, military, laborers, and hopefully onto other populations as well. So Our founding story stems from my background in healthcare. So I was a venture investor in early stage healthcare companies. Happened to be a collegiate basketball player. As many former athletes, I turned to running in my 30s, as many of us type A people do. And hydration was a real challenge for me in a way that it never was during basketball. So I started poking around, trying to figure out if it was just me or whether other people were having this challenge. Turns out pretty much every athlete is having this challenge. And the sort of stars aligned for the sort of, we never identify as a wearables company, more as a biosensor company, but the stars have really aligned for that space to be taking on steam. So we recently opened pre-orders. We'll be shipping product pretty soon here, and just opened our Series A. So hoping to pick up pearls of wisdom from founders like Mina on how to get some success under our belts and onto an exit someday.
It's so interesting, both of you guys started the companies out of personal problems, right? Looking to solve a problem that you had. I'd say from our time at OSA, we see a lot of founders, and the ones that really sort of come to the front are often the ones who have had a personal problem and they couldn't find a way to solve it. And they're like, I'm just going to do this. And they take it on as a crusade, and it turns into a company in many cases. So that's definitely what I heard loud and clear from you guys. What I also like, and something that OSA has done over our almost 5 years now is, and I didn't say this up front, so apologies, we kind of look for products or services that athletes, teams, or fans can use or wear. It's pretty broad, and we have examples of, a hard good, a hardware item, and products assortment from Heroclip. And then we have this connected athlete service offering, hardware, software, pretty complicated, backed by some sweet database. So it's really cool in our role to see the range of ideas that founders have. So thank you for representing those ends of the spectrum. Let me ask you a couple questions. I always find it fascinating, and I know what my story when I started OSA is. I won't bore you with that, but I always find it fascinating to how did you know it was time to start? And did you quit a job and start on a day? Did you parallel path and have a side hustle and turn it into a job? Talk about the moment when you went all in.
Do you want to start, Meredith?
Sure. My story is a little unique. I had a luxury that most entrepreneurs don't have, which was that I was an entrepreneur in residence at Harvard. Many years I had graduated from Harvard, so it was a program open to alums to come back and basically get 12 months of salary support and health insurance and office space and a modest startup budget to start a company. And, an EIR position, they do exist. Usually there are strings attached because they're usually within a venture fund, and your concept might be partially owned by that fund. But I just got incredibly lucky. So I went into this 12-month position with some ideas coming from the healthcare industry of where I thought some white space opportunities might be. But I had that luxury of not having to cram it into my nights and weekends and not having to moonlight, of really spending 100% of my time with a salary to really focus on where I thought those opportunities would be. And so, 12 months might sound like a really long time when you're ideating. It's not. It went by very quickly. So pretty much, I think I spent the first 6 months really fleshing out the business model and the business case and having the opportunity to start testing it with people and getting feedback. And in the early days, we did a lot of pitch competitions just to see if our idea had legs. And we were really lucky to be able to raise just enough capital by the end of that 12 months to start to take it forward.
And what year, just out of curiosity, what year was that timeline?
2015.
Okay, so I asked a loaded question because you've been working on this a while. This is not like an overnight success. This is years of work going into a product.
No. And on that point, I would liken what we're doing to a medical device more than anything else. And so, and in fact, last piece here, and I'll kind of get off my soapbox, but something I was never able to do as an entrepreneur in the true healthcare industry is really understand the problem I was trying to solve first. In healthcare, you're kind of limited by what you can discover, especially in biotech. And then you kind of have to see if there's a commercial path forward for it. And I was adamant that I wanted to build Nix the other way. I wanted to understand in painstaking detail the problem to be solved, and then go engineer the perfect fit solution to that. So again, I have the luxury of being able to do that. But what happened was we went out and started engineering that solution. We spent about 1.5 years on it. Turned out it wasn't going to get us to where we needed the product to be. So we scrapped it and started over.
That's a good segue to Mina, who's a little engineering background. Talk about your moment.
Yeah, so my story is a little different. So I actually try to convince myself not to do this because I just had no business creating a product, because I used to be an academic. I was a professor at the University of Washington Business School, and I had left just because it wasn't the right fit for me. And I was working on 2 other startups, like unrelated to making physical products. And I had this idea, and I was like, doodling. I was like, oh, I wish somebody would invent this. And nobody would. And I just kept on thinking about it. And there's this bathroom at the SeaTac airport, which is the Seattle airport, where I finally said, okay, I've got to do this, because it was just like so inconvenient and I needed it. And at that point, I didn't know anyone who made physical products here in Seattle. I didn't even know anyone who knew somebody who was in manufacturing. So I just felt like I was completely lost, but somehow I was able to find some people and gather some resources so I could put together my first prototype and do a Kickstarter campaign. And when the Kickstarter campaign was successful, that gave me the validation I needed to kind of take the next step and invest some of my own resources to see what could happen. So that was my moment when I decided to invest a little bit of my own money to see where this could go.
Well, that's an interesting, and so we'll get to the not all like lots of paths to becoming founding a company and creating something. You mentioned a couple things that we maybe we'll talk about. Well, 2. One is the sort of different ways to fund a startup. There are lots of different ways, so maybe we'll come back to that in a second. And then, of course, I'm going to put Mina on the spot, because you mentioned the entrepreneur in residence role, and now that Mina has sold Heroclip, maybe you can talk about, I'm jumping ahead, but talk about your next, because I know there'll be some people interested in that program.
I talk about my next step?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I am really excited that my next step after having sold my company is to go into REI's new fund. So REI has a new $30 million fund for BIPOC founders. And I will be its new entrepreneur in residence. So I know that they have, they have a new program open called Navigate. And I think if you Google it, I think they're taking applications now. I'm starting tomorrow, so I don't know a ton, but from what I know, it sounds like an amazing program. Like they really want to tailor the program to the individual startups. I wish it had been around when I was just starting out, so please check it out. So that's
no, it's pretty amazing. Well, thanks, because we've met the REI folks, and they're a great example of the ecosystem is growing. There's an increasing interest and appetite to helping founders start great companies, particularly minority founders. So of course, OSA cares a lot about that. You guys are great representatives of that and our shared mission. So it's awesome that Mina, you'll be in a new role in that capacity. We look forward to
excited.
Make some intros and do some deals. Let's
Totally.
help next generation. Okay, let's talk. If you want to, we're going to come back to maybe some milestones and some things in the future. But given we have some founders saying they're on the call, let's talk about how you funded your company. I heard a few things. Not everyone is in a position to put their own capital in, although many founders will put their capital in. They'll put their retirement accounts in. They'll mortgage their houses. They'll put it on their credit cards. They'll do a lot of things to get their company started. But maybe you can share a little bit of each of your paths around initial funding and then steps along the funding, the combination of dilutive and non-dilutive capital. And we might get some questions from the audience on this one. So maybe let's have you start, Mina, just because you have gone through the full cycle, and then could turn it over.
So I have used tons of different funding methods. I did put in a little bit of my own money just to get started on the prototype, because I really wanted to do a crowdfunding campaign, not just for the money, but also for the validation. So in the lifetime of the product line, we did, I believe, 4 crowdfunding campaigns through which we raised about $500,000 altogether. So crowdfunding campaigns, as most people know, is basically you're pre-selling your product. So you get the money, you make your product, and then you deliver the product. So besides that, we have raised money. We did equity fundraising. So several OSA members are investors. We've also done equity crowdfunding, which I really do not recommend. Oh my goodness, one of my worst mistakes. I will not name the platform I used.
But can you elaborate the pros or maybe the differences of why crowdfunding for cash was good, crowdfunding for equity not so good? In a nutshell.
Yeah, in a nutshell, because I would say because of the legalities involved. I mean, I spent tens of thousands of dollars in legal costs to raise like a few $100,000. And there are literally people who invested like $120 who are like emailing me like constantly asking for updates, so, which is fine, but that is not what I was told would happen.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay.
And we've done also a lot of non-dilutive financing. So there is, places like Amazon has loans with a pretty decent interest rate for Amazon ads, like PayPal has loans, Clearbank has revenue-based loans for ads. And then there's a thing called Kickfurther, which has inventory loans. I did some investor loans. And the reason I did so many loans is because I have a physical product that requires payment before I get paid from the customers. And with COVID, the cycle just became longer. So, that was very challenging just to keep the working capital cycle going. So those are some of the funding sources that I used. So I feel like, if you really want to give your business a go, there are a number of funding mechanisms available to an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agree. And Meridith, I think you're on a combination path, more of a traditional venture, but also some grants and some other.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned earlier, I mean, we started with pitch competitions that had cash prizes, which was actually, thankfully we had a story that was resonating with people. We probably won, 6 or 8 of those sorts of pitches. We've gotten maybe 200,000 of non-dilutive funding through those sorts of things. So that was a great way to get started before we even had any traction. As I mentioned earlier, we didn't have a product at first. We had an idea. So that was tough to pitch, and 100% with you, Mina. I mean, physical product, there are very real costs involved. Manufacturing is not cheap, nor is it easy. So we did some non-dilutive awards. We got a lot of stuff from the state of Massachusetts, especially if you're hiring local, even degree-seeking students for internships and things like that. You get reimbursed for that. Convertible notes, a priced seed round, and now we're raising our priced Series A. We haven't had quite as much luck with things like DoD grants, which has been a little bit of a bummer because we absolutely have a massive application there, but I think DoD is just skewing a little bit later stage these days. And certainly I will be asking Mina for advice when we get to this, but as we launch our product to finance inventory, absolutely we'll be looking at debt. It's a great way to think of working capital.
Yeah. Well, it's thank you guys for sharing that. It's and we've known you a while. It's clear that you know your way around the financials of your company, and you've learned your way around trial and error, other ways to fund the company. I would have to say, and maybe on behalf of all of us at OSA who talk to founders quite frequently, there may be, and I'm, this is, hey, in honor of Women's History Month, we want to make sure that women, especially who might not have the comfort level of financials, or they just don't have the confidence, or that they don't know their way around, and we're here to demystify it and make it accessible, right? And there are a lot of things that you guys just shared that, if people on the call tonight, that would be a good example of coaching, because there are a lot of ways to fund your company. Some of them are, as you heard tonight, non-dilutive capital, which basically means you own more of the company for longer. And some of them are dilutive capital, which means selling pieces of your company to investors over time. And as Mina said, there are some things you can learn along the way. And the more we learn from what works, and what's productive versus what's maybe distracting or worse. Those are some good early lessons. And so we like to make sure that women especially start off from a position of knowledge and then confidence, and that they approach the right sources of capital for the right parts of their business. So I guess a long-winded way of saying not everything is venture fundable, and not every part of a venture fundable business needs to be venture fundable, right? Does that resonate with you guys?
I totally agree.
Yep.
I mean, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, and this is a little bit of a tangent, is like alternative models of investing and getting returns. There are different types of startups, so there should be different types of investing.
Yeah, agree.
Absolutely.
Agree.
Absolutely.
Do you guys want to share? So let's shift gears in case, but people in the audience listening, if you have questions, chime in, please. We're taking note of those. Maybe you can talk about a couple of the, I like to sort of ask milestones, and then also I'll have kind of the best day, worst day question. Because starting anything is hard, right? Sustaining it over years and years, as each of you have done, hard. Takes a lot. So maybe talk about a couple of milestones, highs and lows, if you will.
Sure. Go ahead, Meredith.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know if I could pick any specific ones. I mean,
That's why I asked you to go first.
Exactly. I mean, anyone on an entrepreneurial path knows that there are so many ups and downs, and there are days where you're like, we're gonna be so successful, and days when you're like, we're gonna go out of business. And I always joke with my husband that the best days are when those things occur in the same day, which does happen. But no, I think on the upside, again, we're earlier in our path, but things like, winning very public awards, like from the NFL, or being on TV, or, validation from elite marathoners that we work with. I mean, those are just so validating. When one of the awards we won was awarded by the Kraft family that owns the Patriots. So things like that, of just like, that's some real, pat on the back, you're on to something. And that feels amazing. Worst days, these happen all the time, especially as we're trying to get through manufacturing right now. But, like our factory shut down for about a week and a half ago, just because of COVID. There was a COVID flare in Shenzhen. And you're just like, well, nobody can control that. That just is what it is. There's nobody to, try to nudge along. There's no way to coach it. There's no way to navigate it. Like, we just got to wait for that week to pass. I totally honest, for some of those entrepreneurs out there are going to be days when money gets tight. I have put my own personal savings into our account to bridge payroll. Thankfully, no time recently. Ever since we've raised like formal rounds, it's been a lot easier, but those can be scary days. Lots of ups and downs.
Mm-hmm. Mina, the roller coaster.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with many things Meredith said. I mean, the validation is super important. Like, whenever I felt down during Heroclip, I just go on Amazon and read some of the reviews, and it'd be like, oh, we are doing something right. But as a one best thing, I did put down, when our product got into REI, I think that was probably one of the lifetime highs in the lifetime of Heroclip, because I had really designed with REI in mind, and it really felt like we had like achieved like a major milestone, and just like exactly the kind of like customer we had been looking for and had been aiming for. So that was great. And then, like Meredith said, like there had been so many worse days, like especially with COVID, there were so many worse days. Like, one of the things that happened was like there was an energy crisis. So our factory informed us that they could only operate 2 days out of 7 for like months. I'm like, what? And then our aluminum pricing went up 50% in a year, and just like thing after thing. And then having to like lay off people when stores shut down. And then the thing that took the cake, looking at the lifetime of Heroclip, was like when our first knockoff appeared on Amazon. That was really, really tough. So yeah, thanks, Kate. I got all worked up. I can like think of all these things.
Reliving it.
My husband, remember when that happened and that
Well, as I sometimes say, because I feel you, I'm like, sometimes if you don't laugh because you have to laugh because you might cry.
Yep.
We've all had those days, and I think probably everyone in the world with pandemic has had those days. From a business lens, I heard you say something. I'll just reiterate for the group, louder for the ones in the back. You can only control what you can control, and I think the sign of a good founder, a good CEO, a good business leader is to know what could happen, right? Like these are the things that could happen, and some of them are in our control, and some of them are not. And it's like you just have to live through the ones that you can't control. I mean, the pandemic, for example, right? So some of the things you guys have done are pretty amazing, showing some tremendous resilience, managing through unprecedented challenges. I'd like to maybe ask a question around how do you evolve your business model in light of some of those things? Like one of the things we talk to founders, like it's, especially early on, it's all a point of view, backed by some assumptions, right? Hopefully some good, well-informed ones. But it's very dynamic. So the minute you started selling on Kickstarter, the minute you went live at Amazon, Meridith, as you're now launching your product, you're starting to bring it to market, it takes on another dynamic life. So can you maybe talk a little about how do you just think about, because you could make yourself crazy. Everything is changing and moving so quickly. Like, how do you think about what's most important when you're in that very dynamic, okay, business is live, things are happening regularly. How do you think about it? How do you prioritize it? Importantly, what advice would you offer a founder when literally there are so many things going on? Like what you guys have learned around how to prioritize in a fast changing context.
This one's hard. I'm happy to share a thought if that's all right. For us, especially in the early stages too, when you're pitching to everybody and you're getting thoughts and feedback and you're assessing the space that you're launching into, there are so many different opinions, and you've got to figure out which ones am I going to listen to and which ones am I going to stick my heels in or dig my heels in and feel confident in my choices. And especially for us being in a space that's evolving, that's brand new, we're launching a product that literally doesn't exist. There's no hydration sensor anywhere on the market, or at least now there is. We have one competitor that's on the market, but figuring out how to position that. I mean, candidly, it's just remaining nimble and seeing what is happening in the space, making the best judgment that you can. I just have a philosophy of try to make a decision with 75% of the information you'd actually like to be able to make the decision, because you've got to make it quickly, and just, sort of be open to thoughts and feedback as they come along, because if you made the wrong choice, maybe you can adjust going afterwards. But for us, it's been adjusting our messaging and our positioning. We've had comparable products that are not doing hydration sensing, but doing, sensing of other things that, we're sort of like, okay, are they successful? What are people saying? Is it interesting? How do we differentiate, or how do we assimilate and try to hitch onto that success? I'm sure Mina has a lot more, being so much further ahead.
No, that's high awareness of the marketplace. I would gather is sort of just what you said, is from consumer plus competitor plus feedback on your own stuff. Mina, how about you? How about prioritizing and kind of figuring that out?
Well, I think, because we had been a small team, even as we grew, it was very important for me to keep our team small. So the biggest we got was like 7, and we used a lot of contractors. And as Meridith said, we were always very nimble. So one of our mantras was like, fail quickly. So we would experiment and try to fail as quickly and cheaply as possible. And of course, if we didn't fail, that would be the ideal case scenario, and we would keep it going. But the other mantra was it's not the end of the world, because our team would get so down if something didn't work, or something bad happens. And, it would be very demoralizing for our team. And our team especially was pretty young. And they were so loyal and committed to the company. It would be there was a death in the family. And I'd be like, come on, it's not the end of the world. It's okay, So that kind of became our mantra. It's not the most positive mantra, but for us, it was, it kept us going. It's not a big deal. We'll pick ourselves back up and keep on going.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's all relative, right?
Right.
A question that relates to that is maybe how you talked about your team a little bit. How do you reach out for help? Because one of the things that we've, again, is sort of a hallmark that at least I personally try to do, but I think great founders do it really, really well, is they reach out to a lot of people for help. It's not necessarily your DNA, right? You're like, I'm doing this. So talk a little about, and what advice might you offer? How do you reach out for help? Generally, specifically, what kinds of people, how often? Just maybe talk about the concept of getting help, not from your employees, but from people in your network.
Well, I feel like, so I have my board of directors, and then I have my investors, some of whom are also my advisors. And I feel, I mean, one of the best things about having done Heroclip is, those people, I mean, truly, and I'm not just saying that because of the people here. I feel like they have been incredibly available to me, whether it's by phone or text. And I try to use their time judiciously, but I feel like, whether it has been about like some decision I have to make, like financially, or like human resource issues, because my team was generally pretty inexperienced, I often felt like I didn't have a thought partner that I could really talk to on a strategic level. And I often felt like I could use my board directors and advisors for that purpose, like more higher level thinking rather than like, will you please look at my financials? So I use them more on a strategic level, I would say.
Yeah. So much of that resonates. I'm a solo founder, so I also never really had a true thought partner on some of the topics. I mean, certainly product strategy, product development, I certainly have great partners from that perspective. And we've actually gone a little bit the opposite way. We've gone we've professionalized a lot of our roles early. So we do have more senior people, which is just a different choice. It's a more expensive choice, but it's gotten us where we need to be a little faster. But to answer the question, I mean, I'm a huge fan of like just-in-time answers. I don't know if this is a separate question later, but we did go through an accelerator where there's a lot of sort of curriculum, a lot of sort of seminars and reviews of certain relevant topics. And I've got to be honest, I actually don't think that's the best way to learn on the go. For me, I can be more efficient when I say, okay, I need I don't know, use the example of like an HR partner. I would rather be able to have 5 entrepreneurs that I have great, genuine relationships with on speed dial that I can call, text, whatever, and say, hey, have you done this? Who did you use? Who do you recommend? And I try really hard, never to get more than like 2 or 3 recommendations before I just make a decision and go. But I think, the resources, I mean, it's same as Mina, it's, board, advisors, investors, friends. I'm a former VC, so people in the investment industry. I sort of have an embarrassment of riches of a network, so much so that sometimes I don't know who to ask. There's almost too many. So I've taken to sending out emails to my entire investor base with very specific asks and saying A, B, and C are what we need to get done. Does anybody have any insight? And that's actually been really successful too.
So people respond to those.
Yeah. Not 100%. I'm sure there were people that have insight that, either didn't read it or whatever. But, I think we had a question recently about B Corp status, and I must have gotten a dozen responses of offers of intros of people who know how to navigate it. I mean, I think that's always, the most efficient way. And I'm trying to teach my team to do that too, especially my engineers really like to just be heads down and solve the problem themselves. And I'm like, no, pick up the phone and call somebody who's done this.
Yeah.
I have to agree with that too. I belong to a group like that. We actually have like an email group of like about 20 entrepreneurs, and most of them are way, way, way more experienced than I am. And people just like list a problem, and whoever can will, intros or like, technical help or strategic help. Yeah. So that's been really helpful.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I think just, again, that sort of best practices, founders having a peer network early, and then being specific in the request, and as close to real time or near real time as possible. I agree with a lot of that. I think that makes our side of the table like able to respond better.
Yeah.
And then
I do that to you all the time, Kate. How many times have I texted you?
well, that's whatever. But no, the point is to have the founder community, because they're going to be able to answer questions that investors can't answer,
Yep.
and have a responsive investor base. And one of the best practices you mentioned, and I know Mina did this well, many of our portfolio companies do as well, although not all. I don't. Some early practice of sharing out results for better or worse, and then importantly your asks, like, hey, I need help in these 2 or 3 areas, because the investors, the ones that read it, are going to try, right? If it's somewhere in their capacity to bring an answer or to make a referral or give you some guidance, they're going to try. So that's a great best practice. I would encourage anyone listening to start early. Not perfect, just like get something out there and then work to optimize it over time. It helps anyone in their investor community stay up to speed and be real. That's where some of the leverage is, I believe. So
if I can add to that too, it also makes fundraising your next round a lot easier. Like we've noticed, that communication with our investors regularly meant that when we opened up this round, we got half of it within 3 weeks, because people knew already what was happening within the company.
Right. Right. And you knew. It's one of those things where we've said, like, to your point, and maybe you can talk a little about, you're about to raise a Series A round, a significant amount, having a really good deal room, like call it a deal room, but having a file structure that makes sense, having the documentation in there as complete as possible and as up to date as possible. From my observation, it separates even early stage founders. Even if it's a pitch deck and a pro forma and maybe 1 or 2 other things, it just starts to separate you from other people. So you present immediately as potentially more investable because you appear to have your act together. And as you progress through the business, your deal room, obviously the files, the cabinets get a little bit fuller. There's a lot more stuff and a lot more reality to the documentation or to the business stories. But talk about, maybe you're raising a Series A, and maybe I'll come back to you, Mina, on what was it like to sell Heroclip, because that might be it's awesome to have an exit, but talk about that. But maybe Meridith, one of our last little cycles here, you're about to raise Series A. Talk about how it is to be a woman out raising capital right now, and what you're doing.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's you're never. We always get questions from other, female founders of like, oh, is it harder? And it's like, well, I don't know, because I've only ever fundraised as a female. So I don't have anything to compare that to. And of course, when an investor passes on your deal, you never they're not going to say, well, it's because you're female, right? That's not a thing. So, thankfully the gender part kind of never comes to mind, and it's just about charging forward. But for best practices, absolutely, I love how you sort of, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but put in that word appear to have your act together, because sometimes you don't know what you're doing. And sometimes you have to give a few pitches and get the feedback to be like, oh, I really should have had a slide on that specific key performance indicator, or whatever the case may be. But it is absolutely the confidence that's going to get an investor to say, wow, that Meridith, I think she knows what she's doing. Let me put some money behind that company. So anything that you can do to, or we've tried anything that we can do to make it look like we've got that buttoned up, from our deck to even just the stylizing of it. I think entrepreneurs underestimate all the time how their deck actually just aesthetically appears. And then it's just working a network in the same way that we do when we have an ask. I, tonight just sent out a dozen emails saying, hey, I'm really trying to get to an investor at Nestle Health Sciences, because I really think our story would resonate with them. Do you know anybody over there? So it's, just a little bit relentless.
Well, message received. Everyone listening tonight.
Nestle Health Sciences.
If anyone knows anyone, let us know. Mina, how about you? Because congratulations. Talk about your sale, and how did you get to the decision it was time, and then how did you navigate and actually close the sale?
Yeah. So, well, as you know, Kate, since I talked to you a number of times about this, it was a very complex decision. As you know, this thing happened early 2020 called COVID, which led me to rethink a lot of things. So our plan we had been growing very well, and we had a number of plans that we were going to put into action in 2020. And then COVID happened, and we were not able to do those things. In the meantime, some other challenges arose, let's just say. And because of those challenges, it made me think that either we had to, even though we grew during COVID, we grew by, I think 25% and 27%. Those growth wasn't supported by the kind of margins we had planned on, which derailed our plans. So that made me think that either we had to go out and raise more money to get back on track, or look for a buyer who might be able to take our assets and our IP and leverage their existing infrastructure to really take the company, the product to the next level. And so we kind of explored the market to see if anyone might be interested. And there were several that were interested. And we ended up selling to a company called GearAid, which is not such a big company where they might buy Heroclip and put it on the shelf and forget about us. It's a smaller company such that Heroclip's revenue will actually have some significant impact, but it's owned by a larger company. So they have some like great distribution resources and infrastructure resources. So I thought it was a great fit. And actually, one of my key employee is actually going over there to work there. I think she's starting next week, which is awesome. So that's kind of the story, and I'm really thrilled. And the CEO over there has been in the outdoor industry for like decades, including outdoor research and Helly Hansen. He's really awesome. So really happy that it worked out. But in the end, it was all about kind of, ever since I took on my first investor, it's been, about like making sure that they get their money back and then some. And I felt like this was the best way to make that happen.
Yeah, and as one of those people, I'd say well done in the face of a lot of adversity. And you didn't mention tariffs and some other things, but you've weathered some storms. But I think what I heard, and what maybe just to kind of recap a little of that, is you guys both have a firm, and this is really to sort of advise founders, that you have a firm grasp on your business and what it costs to produce and what your margins could be and what it takes to, quote, make money, right? And get to some level of profitability. So that's something that some founders don't have that context, and that may be a reason to go through an accelerator, right? So if you don't have, or find a coach who can help you understand the economics of the business you're in, because that's a critical distinction for a founder who's deemed fundable versus, or investable versus, come back when you know that. So that's something that's interesting. And then another that you talked about was, it was fun to go through the journey with you, because you had always been thinking about, how does Heroclip, the product, live on? It wasn't like, let's just liquidate them and call it a day. It was always like, hey, and you mentioned that it's patented, and I think both of you guys have patents. So as an investor, that was super attractive, I think, to a lot of us and to a lot of investors. So for anyone listening, if you have protectable IP, obviously the bigger the moat, the better. And then, Mina, you wanted the product to live on, and you found a partner who hopefully will expand it and explode distribution and ultimately return to your investors and also to yourself. So it's a great story, and a really accomplished story. And then Meridith, you're just launching now, and you're raising some capital, but I don't think I heard you exactly say so. And we have one or two questions I want to get to. I don't think I heard you say, when will people be actually able to purchase and use? I think you said pre-order, but when do you expect the first patch on, say, this person's arm?
Yeah, so pre-orders are open now for sure. Get on there and place a pre-order. And then we're looking at shipping finished product mid-June.
Okay, mid-June. So in time for summer heat wave.
Exactly. Training for fall marathons, the whole thing.
Okay, and as Mina mentioned, DTC and Amazon is your initial commercial strategy, primarily DTC, and then some specialty retailers and that sort of thing?
Exactly right. Yeah, we're actually not starting out on Amazon. We're going to walk before we run here. But yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Good.
Awesome. Congrats.
Thank you.
We got a great question. I love this question. I'm not going to name who, I know who sent it in, but thank you for sending this. What superpower do you have as a female founder?
Oh, great question. I would say, I'll go first. I would say, and this one's hard because I think it's a human thing that disproportionately hits women, not worrying about being likable, knowing what I know, being confident in what I know, presenting it as stuff that I know, and pushing back on, sometimes there's a little bit of a power struggle, especially with investors, regardless of gender. Investors want to, really emphasize their knowledge and their power. Sometimes it's great when you find investors like OSA where that is not the case, but feeling totally entitled as a female to just be like, actually, that's incorrect. And I will tell you what I live and breathe my company every single day for the last, 5 years. You've learned about it in the last 15 minutes. So let me tell you how that actually is. That's
good for you, because I found that when I was pitching, I would get like all these people who had known about my business for 10 minutes telling me what to do. Like, I'll tell you what you need to do. So that's great that you have that attitude. I feel like my superpower is the desire to like look under every rock. Like I do not feel satisfied until I feel like I have explored all options, and then I'm cool and I can make a choice and have no regrets and move on.
Excellent.
Brilliant.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm sure you have other superpowers, but yeah, I would add, I think I like one that, and it's maybe to your point, human, but I think maybe it's one of those, I'm not sure if women do it better than men or just differently than men, but communication. Mm-hmm. And I can't underestimate the importance of that, whether it's, with your team, with investors, with customers, like whatever, the clarity and consistency of communication helps a lot, right? So I know you guys are communicators extraordinaire, but I'd say for some founders listening, and potentially investors, it's like the founders have to be pretty dialed and be clear and concise and on point, and confident, as you said, men, women, children. But the investors have the attention, as you guys just described. Hey, you have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. Like you have the attention of a fruit fly. We do. So I guess I would add, if you can develop communication as a superpower, it will help you stand out as a founder for sure in that competitive market. So I don't know if we have any other. I'm just looking at the comments. We have a few more minutes to answer other questions. We covered a bunch of the stuff that I sent out. Are there, and I'm just looking over quickly, I don't see anything else, but if you guys on the audience have any other questions, now's a good time to ask. Otherwise, if you have other comments or closing thoughts for our community tonight, this evening, I don't see any more questions coming in. We do have, I think we had my team is, I don't know if we're going to be able to announce our winner of the competition. I guess I will be able to announce that in a minute. I just saw that come in. So maybe a question for you guys to just close it off. What maybe parting words of advice, if you're a woman starting a business in the sports industry or even in another industry, maybe some kind of, here's a question. Good one. Thank you for that, Kelsey. Role model. A role model that made you think you could start your own business. That's a great question. Mina, how about a role model for you, and Meridith?
I really think role models are just like everywhere. And maybe because I'm in a very entrepreneurial city, but it seems like everybody has some kind of an idea, and they are taking, I shouldn't say everybody, but so many people are taking steps towards making something happen. And one of my beliefs is that you don't have to have everything figured out to take that first step, because things are changing every day anyway. So, I think they're kind of all around me, and I get inspired by like somebody just taking the first step towards anything that they want to work towards. So sorry, I don't have like a person in mind.
Oh, I love it. Role models are everywhere. I love that.
Yeah. That is brilliant. I mean, I was thinking the exact same thing, in that, we talk about this in all sort of aspects around education and professional development, that you can't necessarily dream to what you can't see. And so my inspiration was literally my best friend from business school, who started her company in a totally unrelated field, maybe 4 years before I did. And it was so near to me. And I saw her going through that path, and I saw her uncertainty. She let me see that. where I was just like, wow, I guess I don't need to know everything before I start a company. There's like this misconception. And I now have female founders reaching out to me saying like, oh, I have this idea, but I don't know. And should I get an MBA first? And I'm like, absolutely not.
That's what I say too.
Not that mine hasn't been valuable.
Exactly. I mean, I used to teach them.
Yeah, no, but just to realize, and man, this is a whole separate Zoom topic that I learned in my 30s in my career, was just, not everybody knows everything. And so it's just, isn't that like the weirdest thing to say out loud? But I just always thought like, maybe there's something I need to know before I go and do it. And as I realized, absolutely not. Like it's the doing that's going to give you the knowing. And so to just literally have an everyday person, a good friend of mine, start her company, I was like, oh, maybe I can do that too.
That's good. Well, I love it. I look for another hallmark is you guys are learning machines, not machine learning. That's a whole nother thing.
We have that. We don't need
that. We have like learning machines. And I think, again, founders, like we talked about the dynamic nature of business in general, and especially now, and how fast and how everything. So being a learning machine and being able to quickly distill and understand whatever that is and be able to interpret it and apply it is a big thing. Okay, we got the late questions coming in. Keep them coming, you guys. We have one from Brandy for each of you. How do you keep your energy and passion for your work? This might be a little of how do you charge your batteries?
For us, and again, we're kind of in manufacturing, jungle at the moment, but I think it's taking the wins where you can get them, and every little bit of progress is such a thrill. And just, I wake up every day just thinking like literally the definition of entrepreneurship is just solving problems all day long. And if I approach it that way, then each problem that pumps up is not going to throw me off. It's not going to take my balance away. It's just like, okay, that's the next one on the list, and just, checking off the boxes. So, part of it is just mindset when those bumps and bruises come of like, yep, we knew these were coming. Let's just keep going. And then just really trying to practice self-care. I'm very, very adamant that I am off the clock at certain times, with the exception of right now. It's my bedtime here on the East Coast. But just really setting clear boundaries and being unapologetic about it.
Excellent advice. Mina, how about you?
Well, like Meredith said, just like focusing on some of the small wins. Like I said earlier, like one of my things that I did was going to look at Amazon reviews. And then there's sometimes when I take my kids and we go to like an REI where we see my products, and the kids get super excited too. They'll be like, that's mommy's product. And then like self-care as well. Like I actually like always ate alone for lunch, because that's when I would like eat alone with my door closed. I know it's very antisocial, but that's like the one time when I would just like, I might be like reading the news or whatever, but that is when I would like decompress. And I actually do that even when I'm remote working. My husband will be like, want to eat lunch together? I'm like, no, I'm eating alone. So that's kind of what I do for my self-care. And I try to get in a walk or a run like every day, and bedtime too. Magnesium. So
no, it's good. It's a consistent thing. I'll add, you've got to have boundaries and priorities, and do your best to guard them, right? And only, I like to encourage people like, hey, only you know what works for you. And the more your batteries are charged, the better you're going to be, and that's just going to cascade to pretty much everybody you interact with. So I think we're big proponents of knowing yourself and knowing what charges your battery, and knowing how to keep it as charged as possible and recharge it in whatever way works for you, because what works for you doesn't work for other people necessarily. So I appreciate you guys sharing that. I see a couple comments, but I think we're at just basically at Meredith's bedtime. So on behalf of all of us, we'd like to thank our two founders for sharing some real down and dirty stuff about what it's been like to build companies, grow companies, sell companies, take on new challenges. We look forward to both of your continued success, Meredith, as you launch the product into the world. Mina, as you become the entrepreneur in residence at REI's great venture program. And then I'm happy to announce, it looks like we have identified a winner from our founders in the pool. So I'm pleased to announce, if you're still on the line, Lauren Teague from FanWagon. It sounds like you're building a resale marketplace for buying and selling apparel from teams, colleges, and the like. So we look forward to following up with you, and we'll set up a little coaching session with you. So on behalf of all the attendees, thank you guys very much for an insightful, fun session. We look forward to meeting you, Lauren, and welcome. Anybody's welcome to visit Oregon Sports Angels. You can learn more about these companies from our website. You can also learn about our membership and the great people that are with me on this journey. And if you're interested in more, just follow the dots on our website, and we'll follow up with you guys all. But I'd like to just say thanks, everybody, in honor and recognition of Women's History Month. You girls are making herstory, and may you continue to make herstory with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, everybody, and good night.
Good night. Bye, Meredith.
Bye, Mina.